So thank you again, Steve, for joining us to talk about New Belgium Brewery and the impact that COVID-19 really has had on your business. So I'd love to start by asking you, when did COVID-19, when did you first start seeing an impact, and how has that impact shifted or evolved over the last several weeks?
Yeah, I think for us, January and February, things were really quiet. There was certainly some murmuring and people were sort of tracking the news stories out of China. But, for most Americans, I don't think this is a top of mind concern in January and February. And when March hit, it got really real quick for us. And that's when we created our own COVID-19 task force, which involves, most of the team that reports to me. It involves our on-site doctor, Dr. Patty, who's been an amazing resource to us. And then, some other key people around the organization whose teams are probably more impacted than others. And that group meets weekly so that we can get real-time updates from each department, talk about communication needs we have, talk about operations changes that we have, and really just sort of form the backbone of almost like a crisis management team, if you will, as we tried to work through that. And the first thing we really did was we call them our LCs, our liquid centers, but most people would just refer to them as a tap room. But we closed our tap rooms on March 13th, and we were the first company in Fort Collins to do that, right? And I actually called, I don't know if you know Darren Atterbury, the city manager. Yeah. But I called Darren ahead of time, and I gave him a heads up about an hour or two beforehand, because I wasn't sure how the city would react to it at the time, or what other sort of actions that might spur across the city, right? But as I kind of expected, right? After we closed, a lot of others closed pretty quickly following our lead, and I got a lot of calls and emails actually from others in the community thanking us for taking that action as it related to our employees and our community, because it sort of gave them the cover to do that as well. So that was kind of great to hear and great to see.
Please share with me what you have been doing to lead your team through this pandemic. What pivots have you made at New Belgium Brewery to adjust to the situation, and how have your company values, and I know at New Belgium your values are really important, how have those values guided your decisions as you navigate through this crisis?
Yeah, I think it is good to actually start that with the values, right? So New Belgium has 10 core values and beliefs, but the one that's really been most relevant as we've worked through the COVID situation is balancing the myriad needs of our business, our coworkers, and their families. And when you have that as sort of a bedrock principle, right, that New Belgium's had in place for a long time, right, it gives you a really easy guideline, if you will, right, to make decisions. And having that strong set of values in place and that being really authentic to New Belgium, I think is really key.
What would you say, Steve, that you've learned? What has been your biggest learning as you've navigated through this global pandemic?
I think from a leadership standpoint, there's, it comes back to a couple of things that I think are always true, but are really heightened in times like this, right? The first one is you just got to be transparent in your communication, right? And nothing beats at the end of the day telling the truth to your team. And a lot of times the hardest thing to do, right, is to say, I don't know, right? But in this instance, as we're all trying to deal with COVID, the answer is often, I don't know, right? I was asked today, when do I think that we'll have, office workers back at the brewery? I don't know, right? I mean, I really don't. Yeah. It might be in 2 or 3 weeks. It might be in August. It's hard to predict those kinds of things. But being able to say that and feel comfortable saying that, right, is as important as anything. Because if I say May 15th, right, then May 15th rolls around, and it's like, you said we'd be back, right? And you don't want to set expectations on things you don't know, and that's really important. And I think over time it does help you as a leader build credibility. I've also learned just how resilient our teams are, right? And that's been really cool to see. So we in March, right? So sort of mid March is when all the bars and restaurants started shutting down, and everything that we produced essentially changed to packaged beer. Right? So we don't make draft beer anymore. Everything's in cans or bottles, right? Since there's
Right.
no on premise, and so between essentially in the last 2 weeks of March, our orders changed so dramatically that we basically made 5 million extra cans or bottles of beer by the end of March than we would have thought we would have on like March 10th, say, right? Like that's how much. And, and come here and say, oh, it's 15,000 cases that switched out, or 15,000 barrels that switched out of draft, but into package. But if you really think about it in terms of beers, right, it's 5 million beers, right? So we had to get that glass or get those cans and get that cardboard and make sure we had the right beers, because what we sell in package is a little bit different than what we sell in draft in a lot of cases. And so that's a pretty huge amount of change to manage in 2 to 3 weeks, especially right as everyone was becoming aware of COVID, right, and all the impacts of it. And I was super proud of how resilient our team was. And you just realize the amount of, amazing work the team can get done when it's really critical, right, to the business. And I was super proud of that.
Yeah.
And then probably, the last thing is just how much our team in New Belgium really values the community and wants to give back. And it's been really cool to see from the bar and restaurant fund. And, we were able to raise, well over $200,000 to help that industry and help the people, right, directly through these $350 grants we gave out, which was really cool. And we saw that, and we worked with our friends at Leopold Brothers down just outside of Denver to start making hand sanitizer. So as I said, when we switched from draft beer to packaged beer, we had a lot of stuff that was supposed to go into draft that never made it. And the sanitizers require alcohol, right, to work. But it was a huge help to the distilleries, to Leopold, to start with a product that had already has some ABV, because then they can distill it much more quickly. And so we were able to donate hundreds of thousands of dollars of essentially beer that was going to go out of code down to them, and then they were able to use their distilleries to turn it into sanitizer. So that was cool too, and that was a whole new line of work and a whole new sort of supply chain we had to figure out and make work. And we're now delivering meals within Fort Collins. So the Bohemian Foundation is doing some great work with some local restaurants, Mood House and DC Oaks and Rio, and they're all really stepping up. But we were kind of the last leg that actually needed someone to deliver the meals. And so, we're playing our role in that too. And our local delivery team was so excited to be able to just help, right, to help the community and get those meals that last mile to the people who really needed them. So there's all that kind of stuff that's going on, and people's capacity for caring is limitless, right? And that's really cool to see in a time like this as well.
That is really cool to see, but I'm really not at all surprised that your folks have stepped up like this, and it's just giving back to the community, those things that we can do that just makes us feel better. We're really making a difference. So thank you so much for doing that. And the fund also, as you said, this hospitality industry, the food and restaurants industry, it's been so hard hit. Yeah. So I'm sure those grants were very much appreciated. The impact of COVID-19 will continue for some time into the foreseeable future. Do you see any permanent changes to your business post-pandemic? And we touched on this actually a little bit already.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to say that it's going to be permanent, right? I certainly think, at some point we'll have a vaccine or a cure or something else. And I think, at that point, things will return to, more normal. That may be, who knows, 18 months, 24 months, don't know. But so I don't know if they'll be permanent, but I do think long lasting for sure. Mm-hmm. And, to me, the biggest issue is just how what we call the on-premise, right? But bars and restaurants really return. And that's 20 to 25% of our business. And, we don't really know what the future is going to look like there. And that's hard to predict, right? And I think that will be a change. That will be a change for a while. A lot of the bar and restaurant owners I've talked to says, even if 70 or 80% of the people come back, that's not enough to sustain the businesses, right?
Right.
And so it's going to be hard to see how that industry recovers and how long that takes. And then there may be a huge change to what consumers want, right? So they may be willing to go out, but then will people still want mixed drinks, knowing that a bartender has I guess been more involved in making that product, right, than maybe they would be for a can of beer? Is that going to cause a shift of, will consumers still want draft beer? There's all these things we just don't know how consumers are going to react, at least in that medium term.
Yeah.
And so we'll have to adjust to that, right, and figure out the right way to behave. And then short term, we operate our own tasting rooms at the breweries, right? And so what are those CDC recommendations? What are the state, guidelines going to be for us to be able to operate safely and for us to even be able to bring people back to the offices, right? So I think short term, there's going to be some really big changes. And, to your point earlier, probably less than the university faces, because, as you've said, you're kind of your own little city. So you've got a lot more issues to resolve, right, as you think about reopening than we do. But both of us are going to have a lot of short-term and medium-term changes to how our organizations work.
Yeah, because we're both in service businesses.
Yeah.
And that's people. And this is all about people. And so, there's going to be a lot in terms of facilities related changes to ensure social distancing, et cetera. But I think it will be interesting to see any differences that we might see in consumer behavior, as you were alluding to, and even the delivery models, which are new, that kind of emerged out of this time, if that will continue to grow. But, I think people are also craving their community. So,
no, that's true. People will want to get out.
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting. You're seeing a lot of polls around, people's concerns about going back out, whatever that is, if it's to their gym or to the restaurant or to the grocery store. You'd see all kinds of different industries talking about this in different ways. And there's certainly some legitimate consumer concern there. There's also a lot of people who really do want to get back out. For whatever reason. And so, how that's going to kind of play through it's really tough to predict.
Yeah. Finally, is there any advice that you would like to share with our students, community, business leaders regarding how to navigate COVID-19 going forward?
If I was going to give it a couple of thoughts, the first one is going back to that point before, is just be honest, right? None of us really know what's going to happen in the future. Don't feel a need to make it up, and communicate as openly and transparently as you can around the issues you do know, and say I don't know when you don't know, right? I think that would be the first thing. I think the second thing is probably don't be afraid to make decisions. And we're a lot of times it's there's a desire to have a lot of information and a lot of facts, right, before we say yes or no to something. And in this case, we all as leaders have to make decisions when we don't know all the facts, and we still don't know all the facts about COVID, and we certainly didn't know them 2 months ago when we all started to have to make decisions. But your organization is relying on you to make decisions, and it's important that you do that. And I guess if those are the first two, and the third one would be as you're making decisions and as you're communicating, do it in the context of the company that you are, right? Or the company that you're trying to be. And as I said, in New Belgium, we have really strong core values and beliefs. And so that makes it easier for me. I'm super lucky in that sense, as I said. But it's important that if you said this is who we are as a company, right? That you're willing to act that way now.
Thank you so much. I know you don't know when you're going to be open, so I know you don't want to create an expectation because you don't know, but I will just say, can't wait for the day that happens. And on behalf of our community as well, Steve, thanks to you and New Belgium Brewery for all that you're doing with the grants to help the bar and restaurant industry, with the hand sanitizer, with the delivery service of food in our community. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome, Beth, and thanks for everything that CSU is doing right now and managing through all of this. And I can't imagine the complexity, as I said. So it's been great that CSU has really been a leader as well in this space. And so I can't wait until we're all back together and with some of the other businesses and civic organizations around Fort Collins, and we're able to kind of get back to doing what we all want to be doing for our city here.
I agree, and thank you for that. So there's three other questions. Steve, what has been your favorite beer to enjoy during the global pandemic?
Um, the one you're drinking right now,
Old
right?
Aggie, it's
Old Aggie.
delicious.
I am more than anything. I do love lager, so Old Aggie and Mountain Time. I probably drink more of in the past two months than anything else. Although Voodoo Imperial, Voodoo Ranger is now actually our biggest brand
Yeah.
nationally by a lot. And I know when I talk to CSU students, Voodoo Imperial tends to be their favorite brand.
Yeah, well, we're grateful. Second question, what is your recommendation for staying sane while working from home with kids?
Enjoy it, I think, more than anything. So, with an 8 and an 11-year-old, they're at a great age. I think, you know, knock on wood a little, but we've been fortunate, personally that, the virus hasn't, impacted our family. We haven't gotten sick, or we haven't had a parent or grandparent, right? Or aunt or uncle who's gotten sick. So we're very fortunate in that sense. And um, I don't think the kids sort of fully understand it, the severity of it and how it's impacting the world. So they actually enjoy the time, right? There's all this family time. So we eat 3 meals a day together, right? Because I'm working from home, and we go on bike rides after dinner, and we're playing. There's a lot more Monopoly being played, right? So that's the way to keep it sane, right? Is to actually enjoy it and play into it and figure out, it's almost like it's been like a 2 month family vacation in a way.
Yeah,
And so that's, I think, to me, that's been the best part of it.
that's awesome. And I'm sure you travel and you haven't been traveling, and that gives you more time with your family, which is something this pandemic has given to all of us.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be hard for people to go back to the office, right? Or to start traveling again, right? There's going to be, put aside the health precautions and COVID and all that, there's a lot of people I'm talking to who are really enjoying working from home. And I also think we're being forced to realize how productive that we can be at home. And even for me, like, I don't have a long commute to the
Yeah.
brewery. I got maybe 20 minutes each way. And still, I picked up 40 minutes a day,
Yeah.
right? By working here at home. And I think there'll be some permanent changes in the way, people choose to work or companies choose to work. I could see people having a work from home day,
Yeah.
right? And I think we'll see a lot of other impacts like that as people get out of sort of dealing with the crisis and then think about, hey, what do we learn from that, and what can we do differently?
I think you're right. Final question. Have you made banana bread yet?
Banana bread, no. But my kids have been actually they've been playing around. They've been making sourdough bread, which has been pretty cool. And you get the yeast, and there's some loose relations to making beer, right?
True, true.
As part of that. So my 8-year-old, he's got big plans for some kind of sourdough pizza crust for this weekend. So he's
Mm,
making pizza for everybody. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I
that's
can I can
awesome.
I can let you know on Monday.
I'm pretty
Um,
jealous you've even found yeast in the grocery store because it's like it's empty. But I know with kids, a baking project counts as math, science, and art all in one.
oh yeah, we've been making cakes, and we're watching all those cooking shows, right? Like, Nailed It, and there's been a ton of fun stuff on. So they're picking up all kinds of new ideas.
That's very fun. Well, thank you again. And I hope you all have a great weekend. And, we'll be thinking about you. I hope you and all your family and your employees continue to stay well and stay safe. And when it is safe to come out, looking forward to seeing you at New Belgium.
All right. Thanks, Beth. Thanks for doing this today, and same to you and your family and the whole CSU community. And we'll throw a little get together over at the brewery as soon as we can.
Cannot wait.